All right, welcome back to more AP World vocabulary. Today I'm going to be doing chapter 7. So our first vocab word is the Protestant Reformation, and would basically question the Pope's authority and split off from the Catholic Church to form their own kind of organization. It's still based on Christianity though, and basically would shatter religious unity in Europe, and would also create a lot of internal strife, and you'll see later down on the next vocab word. But it was very individual with like your connection to God. It wasn't based off like the Pope's authority. And then the next vocab term is Martin Luther. So he was a German priest who openly spoke against the Catholic corruption during the time, and he would write the 95 Thesis, and would basically be the catalyst for the Reformation. Next term is the 30 Years' War, which went from 1618 to 1648. It was basically a Catholic Protestant struggle beginning in the Holy Roman Empire, or Germany, but would basically spread across Europe. And it was extremely devastating, killing like 15 to 30% of all Germans, and basically splintered Catholic unity entirely in Europe. Next vocab term is Counter-Reformation, which was the Reformation within the Catholic Church itself, and would try to crack down on corruption, focus more on individual spirituality, but basically kind of adopt things from the Protestant Reformation, and would also like they'd also crack down on the Protestants as well, and like do book burnings or burn people. So next word is Taki Onkoi. Sorry, I can't pronounce that right. But it was basically a resistance to Christianity by dancers or teachers in like South America, and would lead to kind of the fusion and preservation of the native religion, that mainly being Inca religion being preserved there. Next term is the Jesuits in China, and they were basically missionaries who would try to convert the Chinese elite. They would use like politeness, like they compare, oh, it's like Confucianism, and they'd also like try and entice them with science. So basically they convert only like a couple, not many, scholars and some of the elite, but ultimately it'd fail, and they get basically expelled from China eventually. Next term is Wahhabi Islam, which was a movement to return Islam to be more kind of fundamental. So it's kind of like going back to form, because like it was just the guy who led it saw the Islamic world as being like really corrupt, and would mainly reform Arabia, give women rights in marriage, but also kind of oppress the intellectuals, as it would ban a lot of stuff, kind of like coffee or books with like logic in them. And the next term is Wang Yangping, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he was basically a Chinese intellectual and a thinker who promoted kind of a gentleman class among the Chinese elite, and would really just promote moral individualism. It was kind of like a Martin Luther. Next term is Koi Zhang, and it was basically kind of like an idea about research based on evidence in China, and promoted a scientific approach to knowledge, and challenge Neo-Confucianism. And it's kind of like the scientific revolution, which we'll get into later. Next thing is The Dream of the Red Chamber, which was a book, or kind of like a poem, no, more of a book actually, that explored the social life of an 18th century Chinese elite class, like the people who lived in that class, and reflected the popularity of mass media and vigorous paint industry at the time. Also, you had like printing going on, kind of reflects the power of like the printing press and stuff. Next term is Marabi, which was a Bhakti poet, and he would basically she actually would challenge the caste system, and she was just like helps represent that movement. Next term is Sikhism, and Sikhism was a distinct religion in mainly northern India that would blend Hindi and Islam together, and basically saw like there was no Islamic God, there was no Hindi God, there's just God, and would eventually kind of go from being a really pacifist religion to a more militant one, due to it being like oppressed by the Mughals, and or just other Hindus or Muslims, and would become really militant and would actually help Britain take over India eventually later down the line. Next word is the scientific revolution, which was a vast political, intellectual, social transformation from the 16th to the 18th century. The main thing that caused it was like the autonomy that universities had. Like, so compared to like China or Islam, universities, they didn't have to worry about like religious or government restrictions in Europe, basically. And it would radically change human thought to be more really objective, scientific, I guess, and challenge the church a lot, really challenge like religion and stuff. So now we talk about some notable like scientists during the time. First one is Copernicus, a Polish astronomer. So shout out to all my Polish boys out there. And he basically discovered that the sun was the center of the universe, or no, oops, the sun was the center of the solar system. All right. And then the next one is Galileo. He was an Italian who really improved and worked on telescopes, and he would discover the notion of basically an unlimited universe. And he'd also, like, I'm pretty sure, look at a bunch of planets in our solar system, but you don't really need to write that down. Next term is Sir Isaac Newton. He was an English scientist who formulated laws of motion and discovered the property of gravity and revolutionized the understanding of the physical universe. And, pretty big deal. The guy had apple fall on his head. Boom, gravity. All right. And then the next term is European Enlightenment. And it was the idea that is the spread of, the idea that the power of knowledge to transform society could be used to transform society. So the idea that power of knowledge could be used to transform society. It was very open-minded and really critical of other established properties like the king or religion especially. So the European Enlightenment would challenge the divine right of kings and religious corruption as well. And then we move on to Voltaire for the next term. He was a French writer who reflected the Enlightenment in his works of writing, and really just shows enlightened people challenging and forming their own versions of God, basically. And basically, he really just kind of talks about how we don't need God anymore. That's how a lot of like intellectuals saw religion at this point. And you also have the last term being Condorcet. I don't know really how to pronounce that, but he's basically a philosopher who wanted to get rid of sexism, or he's really against like prejudice against women, and would encourage rights for women and challenge especially like the male enlightened people at the time. They thought women were like objectively inferior to men, especially when it comes to like intellectualism and stuff. And really, that's kind of it for Condorcet, or whatever his name is. I can't pronounce it. And really, just last thing about the European Enlightenment, most important part of the Enlightenment is really just the idea of progress being a thing, and like not being bound by religious or other stuff. And that'll be vocabulary for chapter 7. Hope to see you again, all right? Adios.